So we think our case is a lot stronger than the one in North Carolina. And furthermore, if the Attorney General brings it, then the money has to go to the state legislature, and then the state legislature has to appropriate it down to the school districts, with strings attached and as they see best. The way we're doing it, it would not go through the state legislature. They would not take a portion, and they would not get to tell you how to use it. So it would have been nice to have Sean Reyes involved, but in some ways, we think it's more effective the way it is. Regardless, though, we put a provision in your engagement letter. If Sean Reyes decides to get involved at some point, then he can take it over and you wouldn't owe us any money.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? All right. And then I'm assuming the SHARP survey was mentioned in some of your data. Is that the current SHARP survey that was done down in our county?
Yes, they do it every 2 years. The last one with results was 2019.
Okay.
I think they did one, or trying to do one. It's been a bit hard with COVID this year. And I think those results might be out by the end of this year.
Okay.
But so 2019 was the most recent one.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, I think that's it. We appreciate your time. And that is a proposed action item on our agenda later for this evening. Are you there?
I am. That's great. Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email me and look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think Nelson may have just joined us too.
Nelson?
Hello?
All right, is that you, Nelson? Hello?
Hello, this is Nelson.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we're on item number 2.
Okay.
Okay, all right, Mr. Olson, come on up.
Well, thanks for inviting me back. It's been a little while since I had an opportunity to come talk to the board about the Monument Valley project. Maybe a little less exciting than suing a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but exciting nonetheless. Nelson, I'm sorry, I'll email you something down. I've just got a small document. So we've been working hard over the last few months to take the land that you all offered us, look at a couple of options, and then make some determinations. So we hired MHTN, which I think probably most of you or all of you are familiar with, as they've done work for the school district in the past. They spent some time down in Monument Valley and looked at, when we first originally met, we were offered 5 spots, and we narrowed that down to 3 spots. Those 3 spots, if you turn in this document, are on page 2, which are labeled A, B, and C. And so what MHTN did in consultation with our folks and with Tom on the school district, and then superintendent met, I don't know, we met every couple of weeks, I think, with MHTN and talked through some things. And what they did is they did a little bit of an evaluation to determine out of those 3 which would be best. We won't talk through all of the evaluation, but what I've included here is from a 196-page document that they sent to me, and I wanted to save a couple of trees and save you some time, so I just pulled out some of the relevant portions. But if you're really bored one night and want to read through that document, I'm more than happy to send it to you. So what they did was we pulled together some criteria, then based upon conversations with folks in the school district, with students in the area, other people, with our folks, and then evaluated each of those sites. At the end of the day, the site that rose to the top was site A, which is located right up by the high school, just across the street from the high school, the driveway into the high school there, and across the street from the LDS chapel there. So it'll be tucked in behind, if you look on page, there's a couple of pages, but if you look on page, it says 3.5 at the bottom. I think it's maybe the 3rd or 4th page in. You can see it'll be tucked in there behind the agricultural area where there's some trees and vines there that are currently growing. We wouldn't have to modify that at all or change it or even touch it. There's plenty of space up in that corner to tuck the building in that we want to be able to build. And so you can see from this design, the great thing about that location is the proximity to the high school, because we want to make sure that we have some concurrent enrollment classes. And one of the things that I'm really pushing for, which towards the end of the document, there's a page, I think it's maybe the second to last page or third to last page, just a conceptual space plan, and is a welding lab. So we want a CNA lab in there. So I understand that we have some CNAs that is starting up down there in Montezuma Creek, and we would have a CNA lab, but also a welding lab. And the welding lab would just be really concurrent enrollment only at this point in time. And then students can get started on a welding program. We are going to be starting a welding program here in Blanding as soon as our remodel of the old Shopco is done. So then the students could come up and complete their degree up here on that. But that'll allow students just to be able to walk across. It's a much longer walk to go down to the other sites, B or C. And so this will be a lot easier for the students. We looked at the traffic flow, and there won't be a big problem with the traffic flow. You know, one thing that we will miss out on is, you know, just being along that main highway there is really cool, quite frankly. But we're not there to be cool. We're there to provide an education and to really be access for the students, and didn't want students having to walk quite a distance. And there's some other benefits to being in that spot as well, such as access to some utilities and other things. So what I'm coming to you today is the school district kindly offered up some land, gave us the 5 spots. We initially narrowed those down to 3, and now we've narrowed it down to 1. And in proposing to you all to take a look at, you can look through this document. If you want some more information, I could send a larger document to you, is to accept our proposal of building on the location A, closest to the high school there. And then once we get approval on the location, then we'll start working with superintendent and his staff to hammer out the details of the lease. We would come back and present that to the board and make sure you all feel good about the details of the lease, and then we'll go from there. In terms of when the project will start, that's up in the air right now. It depends based on really on funding. The proposal on this building is about $10 million. Every day those costs go up, so it literally has gone from 8 million to 10 million without much us adding anything to the building. Just costs have increased that much over the last several months. And so we are working to raise those funds as quickly as possible. I actually have a meeting on Monday. Hopefully it'll be good news in that meeting, but it'll depend on if good news comes quickly or if we have to spend a couple of years fundraising those dollars. So we're working on that. So I can't comment now on when that'll come through. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Any questions for me?
Can I add a couple of comments before you take questions? I just want the board to be aware of 2 things I think that are important to know. First of all, our maintenance department in our district have been very much involved in this process. They've traveled to Monument Valley on multiple occasions and worked with the group that's gone on the site and looked directly at these locations to really have some influence and opinion, a voice for the district as to where we feel like this would best go. And we strongly feel like Site A is the best option. It's kind of tucked in. I don't think it's space that we'd ever envisioned using. We kind of always really valued our road front property, and also there was some concern about blocking of views that would go that way. So that eliminates those 2 concerns out of the way. And we really valued the ability to build some pathway programs and the proximity to the school would really help facilitate our students' usage of just quickly going, almost like going from San Juan High over to the building across the street, the Venus L Block or the C building. Very quickly they'd be able to access that, and I think it would be a really good asset to be able to build those pathways in the ways that in the areas that we select. So that's exciting. And so really those are the two main things I want. Is first, we agree with that site for both all of the logistical reasons, but also for the educational reasons. We feel that it would be the best site, and our district has been very involved. So just want the board to make sure they're aware of that.
Any questions?
I have a question. Has there been any discussion or concern? Well, let me back up just a little bit. In our schools that have students from 7 through 12, historically, there's been a lot of concern in the communities that have those schools of having the 7th and 8th graders in the same building in close proximity to high schoolers. So now we've got 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th. Is there a concern about the proximity to college students? Has that been a discussion? Has that been a concern? Have all of those things gone away? We've got two supervisors. I mean, I haven't heard anything about it in recent years, but that was a common concern.
Oh,
Monticello wanted a middle school for that reason.
That concern has come to me on multiple times, even before being superintendent. I don't know, in all the cases, the proximity of the concern is direct exposure to each other. You're directly seeing each other, you're eating lunch together, you're in the same halls. So you have an opportunity for these relationships to build with inappropriately from a 7th grader to maybe 11th grader or whatever. That has come to me multiple times. Just even the separation that we have should not put that in the same environment of our college students now and our junior high students. There would be high school kids utilize that building, but I think that their ages are much closer.
Mm-hmm.
But we shouldn't see college students now rubbing shoulders and spending time directly with our middle school age students. There's still enough of a separation that I don't think that brings that into the equation.
Okay, thanks.
Questions? No?
Let me
Go ahead, Nelson.
answer that too as well. Back to Mary's question. Yes, there is a continuation of concern, not just here, but the other campus, like in Montezuma Creek as well. And, I'm hoping sometime in the near future, maybe, that does get addressed and something does become of that question about putting in middle school at either locations. So yes, the answer to that would be, yeah, there's concern of that at all times regarding the age differences of grades. And then second of all, I'm driving by there often where this location is proposed, and this is right on the other side, the west side of the orchard and the garden spot locations. What I would like to know is what is the future plans of the Monument Valley High School's agriculture projects? Are they going to be needing that little triangle area for future educational purposes for the high school students? I do like the close proximity of having the location there for high school students to be able to walk to. And I do have a concern about traffic as well, the highway traffic into the turnoff. I'm not really sure who has ownership of that road between the junction, the turnoff, up to the Goulding's property.
Has anybody approached the county road department, the state highway department to see if this location will require a turning lane? Those are a couple of my concerns. I was hoping maybe along the state highway on the east side of the football field, between the football field and the St. Scale Elementary School, might have been a good location because it's got turning lanes there already. It's not really that much further for students to walk as well. Kind of gives a little bit of a safety. What would I call it? A boundary, a buffer zone, I guess, for adults coming onto the campus and into the high school. Whereas this is just right next door. Just some ideas and some thoughts. I would like to have seen the other two proposals if there was. I think Christian said there was 3. I'm just curious where the other 2 locations would have been.
Do you want to speak to that, Christian?
Yeah, Nelson, I'll send this down to you. The other 2 proposals or locations, one was down closer to the UNHS clinic, just on the east side of the clinic along the highway there. And then the other was just northeast of the elementary school, right along the highway there. And so I'll send this document down to you. We did talk about the turning and in traffic there, and MHTN. They talked to their folks, and they weren't overly concerned about it. I'm sure that when we get down to it, we'll have to have some discussions. And we're not 100% sure if that's the state of Utah road or if that's tribal road there. That we'd have to have those conversations with those folks just to make sure that we're in compliance. And if we had to put in a turning lane there, we would absorb those costs and make that happen there. So we would quite frankly be required to do that if it's state property. So, and then we would work with the tribal entities that if they had concerns as well about that and follow their guidance and their requirements. So in terms of obviously the usage of the land, that's something that the folks at the high school would have to answer on that. And we have kicked around, and this would be conversation for the future, is being right there next to the agricultural site. We know that it has been blessed and dedicated for that purpose, and the nice thing is we won't have to touch any of that, so that we won't have to disrupt that or have any change of the use of the land. But there might be opportunities for us, as we're the ag school, to think through with the high school some opportunities with agriculture, and then with our extension office that's here, and I know they work closely with folks down on the southern end of the county, and there might be some opportunities for partnership there that we just haven't explored in the past. And we've started kind of just kicking that around, so nothing concrete, just a concept that's floating around that I don't think we'd really thought about until all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're right next to some of the agricultural land right there. Maybe there is an opportunity as the ag school to partner with the school district in some way. So,
any more questions, Nelson?
Well, as I'm looking at the drawing from the aerial view, there's to the right corner of that triangle, there's native vegetation noted there. And when I drive by there, I do see little signage of, I guess they're plant identifications. And that just makes me wonder if what that area was designated for. So that just kind of brings me to questioning that as well. I guess that question could be answered by or the local school or the district personnel. But yeah, I just wanted to see what was going on there. anyways, those are my only comments and concerns. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay,
Anything
you.
else?
I think we're good. Anything else?
So it is your hope that we would allow the college to move to step 2, which would be start to establish a lease? I just want to make sure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, to start to establish a lease, which we can do once we know the site.
Draft a lease and,
Yeah.
and work through the legalities there.
Work through the legalities, and then we would obviously come back and talk through that with you once we've worked through our team in Logan, our real property team, and then superintendent's team down here. So.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate you
Thank
coming.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, COVID reentry plan. Still gonna need 30 minutes?
No, I've not been down to 20, it's back to 21. Sweet. And we may not need all of that. I just want to update the board on, our entry plan. I don't know how much of the swirling information and world of COVID you're following out there. We could talk for quite a while about the things that are happening throughout the state in different regions. Even up in Grand, there's major decisions being made. But as for our plan that we have that we have started the year under, we identified that we would start the year in the mountain region. There would be no mask mandate. It would be by choice. We would in the river region there would be a mask mandate as directed and by the Navajo Health Department. And those, for the most part, we are seeing. I think things are stable. We definitely have some anxiety and we definitely have some concern. We've had some concern expressed by parents as cases, even with our first case in some of our schools, there was kind of a wave of anxiety that went through many of our parents. And we had principals calling certain parents and reminding them of what we're doing and what's in place. So I would not in any way try to imply to the board that things have just been smooth and without a bunch of bumps. There's been a lot of rocky bumps, but for the most part they're stable. We're moving along. I have put on here a couple documents that I want to give you the most up to date. The first one is the county numbers, and if you look at the county, that is as of yesterday. So you can see that there's 101 cases in our county right now, and you can see the Blanding and the vicinity has 47, and break those down as it goes. If it's less than 5, they don't really give you a number. They just tell you, so you don't know exactly what those less than 5 mean because it gets too close to maybe being able to identify people. But the Montezuma Creek area does have 23. Monument Valley area has 8. It seems a less number there, and we're monitoring those daily. And then that comes out weekly, and then we, in our plan, talked about having a data dashboard, and that's been happening. And what we've done with our data dashboard, this is information that we want everyone to be aware. We want parents to be aware. I'm aware of a parent that contacted me this morning that said, I am getting a little concerned. I am going to have my kids are going to wear masks to school now. Are they going to be the only ones? And I said, oh no, they won't be the only ones. I said, there's other kids wearing masks to school. I think they're the minority right now in the school that I was talking about. But I said, there are definitely other students wearing masks. So that made me happy that parents are seeing this data and making the decisions that they feel comfortable with, and what level of comfortableness, because one thing we have learned through all this is it's all the way from over here to over there with our public. And this hopefully will give them some information. But if you look at that, our most recent chart that I took off our website just before board meeting, I took this afternoon, you do see Blanding Elementary has 7 active cases. I can't give you all the dates of when some will drop off, and I can't predict when others will be added. San Juan High 6 and Albert R. Lyman 3. So you can certainly see that the majority of what we're dealing with in active cases right now is in the Blanding area. We still have 3 at TES, and there's others with 1, but the majority are in the Blanding area. Our plan is written that if any one school reaches 30, that's a threshold, we, at that time, suspend school and we do what we call a test to stay procedure. And in that case, we would draw upon some resources from the San Juan from our health department, and we would utilize our resources from within, our school nurses and possibly some others who have been trained to do testing. And we would then give a choice to all our students that they could either elect to wear a mask for 14 days, or they could elect to be tested. And if they're negative, they could return. And if they elect to wear a mask, they can return. Those that choose to not do either could certainly choose to still receive instruction virtually. Those that are positive would go through the normal procedures. If they were tested and found positive, they'd go through it. Now that's at 30, and while you see 7, and you're thinking that, in my mind, one hand I look at that and say that's a long ways from 30, but on the other hand I look at that and say an outbreak could really spread quickly. 2 or 3 people spread it to 2 or 3 people, and you could get to 30. We did not see 7. The only time I remember being over 7 in one school was the Monday back from Christmas break in a Blanding school. We were 11, and we were able to contact trace those back to a New Year's Eve party, and it was very quickly. It didn't go up from there. It went down very quickly from there. But that was the only time I saw it really ever even above 2 or 3 or 4 last year. So 7 is definitely piques my concern, that I want to watch it, but it's a long ways from 30. So let's be I'm going to be hopeful. I'm going to have optimism and be hopeful that we're going to stay stable. But I just want the board to know that's really where we're at this point. We are sticking with our plans. We are communicating and making calls when needed. Principals are, directors are, assistant superintendents, and we're just trying to inform, educate, and deal with it daily. And the other thing that I would want the board to be aware, in case you ever had any questions, the daily impact that this has on your staff across the district is pretty pronounced. It's pretty large. I had an employee even yesterday say, I dare say 40% of my day is dealing with COVID. And that's across many positions. And it just is a very wearing thing, because we went into this, everyone, our mission is education. And it just is such a distraction, and it seems like. So just be aware that the mental grind and the emotional support that we need to provide to our staff, to our students, to our stakeholders is also large, because there's a real mental just fatigue involved in dealing with this every day and the unknown. And now when you think you have something in place, you've got 2 teachers that are out for the next 10 days or whatever it might be. We've dealt with all of it, and it definitely fatigues you. And anyways, I am very concerned about our staff, and I realize that we really reached kind of out of burnout last May, and the summer came, and it's good that it came, and we were really hopeful that we'd seen the worst of it. But anyway, we're still dealing with quite a bit of it, so be aware of that, board. But that's what I would update, and if there are any questions, I try to answer them.
Questions? Nels? Oh, go
I have
ahead.
a question.
Yes.
Superintendent, at some point, is there a way that we could get some numbers on some of these students that are infected with the COVID, if they have underlying conditions, health conditions? So we have a better, I guess, keep an eye out for those type of students that do have that.
We are not allowed to ask a lot of those questions, but that is really why we want parents to have as much information as possible, because parents know that they might have a child at high risk, and parents are very much aware, and we want to continue to give them the information that they need to make the most reasonable, rational decisions that they need to make. But we're not allowed, due to many of your FERPA and other laws, to inquire or to even to ask those type of questions.
Right. I understand. And if there are some parents out there that are listening, I hope they could work with us keeping it very discreet and confidential, just so we have an idea, maybe. Like I said,
Yeah,
at
now
some point, maybe.
We may know some
you.
things through an IEP process or through an individual student support plan. So there are times that we do receive some of that information, but again, it's very confidential, and we can build certain plans to support students, but it does start with the parents being involved and coming to the school and working with us. So yes, but
I have a question, and maybe I missed it. Did you say these numbers are updated by the health, I mean, you get them from the health department daily?
daily.
So every day this.
Mr. Kais gets a call every morning from the health department, correct?
Both the health department and UNHS.
And UNHS.
Data every morning.
And I want to again make sure that we're clear of this. This says known active positive cases. There's a wide discrepancy between how this all plays out, and everyone needs to be aware of it. If you're tested in let's say you live in LaSalle and you go to Spanish Valley, you go to Moab, it may take quite a time frame for that to play through the system to get back to our health department's accounting. And so by that time, you may have actually been isolated and all ready to return back to normal activity because you've been cleared. And there's times we know students have gone home sick. There's students we know that go home sick, and we suspect, although we again don't know because we don't control all these factors, but we suspect they're not being tested. So could that be an additional positive? Certainly we wonder. But there are lots of things we do not control. And so to try to start to guess or estimate would be, in my opinion, nearly impossible. So what we're going off of here is known active cases which are coming through those formal channels of UNHS and San Juan Health Departments where officially all numbers are supposed to go through. So be aware of that. Because you could hear a rumor of, well, we know there's a bunch more. And there's probably assumption maybe there is more, but anyway.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the 30 per school, just having a fixed number for all schools. Some schools are going to have a lot more, density of cases to get to that 30 than the larger schools. So I'm just questioning why we're using a fixed number for all schools regardless of size, rather than a percentage or density number.
And the reason we're using a fixed number is because of the way it is written in the litigation that was passed last May in the special session. The legislative body came back together and wrote guiding legislation, and it clearly sets the threshold on any school less than 1,500 students will use 30 as the threshold.
So it's imposed on us.
Now, can it be adjusted or altered? Yes. The board can work with a local health department and revise it and put in place some adjustments to some of this. And county officials and the health department actually, by this same legislation, have the highest level of authority to make changes in any regard. They're the ones that could mandate a temporary 30-day mask mandate. The health department, and then approved by the county officials, is the way the law is written. But the board could recommend that they'd like to see a different threshold used, and I'm certain that the health department would work closely with the board on any recommendation. So I don't want you to leave this conversation that you feel that your hands are completely tied in that area, because I think you do have some ability to influence that. But that's why the plan started with 30s, because legislation has us there right now.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, let's go to number 5, travel and use of the Airbnb.
Yeah, this is just another kind of item that I definitely want the board to at least be aware of, and if the board wants input in or say, then certainly this provides that opportunity for that process to start. But in the last year or so, and I'm not aware of this in previous years, but Airbnbs are gaining popularity. Not just, and in the last year or so, I have seen on a couple of occasions a request for our groups, athletic teams, activity teams, to utilize an Airbnb rather than to use the traditional hotel, which has been most of us when we think of our kids going on a trip or when we think of our students traveling overnight, our paradigm, our concept would be, yeah, they're going to stay in a motel. And it's even built into our spend plans and into our budgeting formulas that way. We have in our spend plan a $30 a night cap on any overnight trip. So we know exactly what a student's going to be charged and what a free or reduced student the school's going to be reimbursed for. But this idea now and this request now to possibly utilize Airbnbs where you could put pretty much an entire team in one home or in one location, maybe with multiple rooms. You have a volleyball team of all girls and you could utilize, maybe there's a room with 4 rooms and it's all in one location. I just want you to know my thinking on it, and I visited with others about it. And then and I don't want there to be any chance of this being a surprise to the board. And if the board so wishes to weigh in with any type of direction, then this would provide that opportunity for that to happen. My thoughts on it are twofold. One is supervision still has to be exactly as we expected it beforehand. Whether you're in a hotel or whether you're in an Airbnb, supervision has to be a top priority. Kids need to be supervised well. The same expectations are in place. You could have some differences when you start to group dynamic things. When kids are a little bigger groups, there could be some differences that you'll need to be mindful of. But I think supervision could still happen. Sometimes even in motels, they put more than 4 kids in a room. I've known that to happen too, where they put 6 or 7 in one at times. So this idea of a group is not totally new to us. But that would be my first concern, is that supervision would still need to be a high priority and at the acceptable level that we expect all of our trips to be supervised and chaperoned. And then the second concern would be that the cost cannot increase over the pre-approved amounts that have already been built into our spend plans and into our fee schedule, our program sustainability, which, you know, you've got to remember that if you go to almost always, it's been tradition, you go to a motel, you pay $30 a night, but then almost always there's a free breakfast in the morning. So you've saved kids $10 because we can do $10 on a meal. If you're in an Airbnb, I am not aware of Airbnbs that have free breakfasts in the morning. So now if you're charging $30 a night and now there's not a breakfast, that cost did increase. And now it's a $40 to our families rather than the typical $30. And so those are the two things, is I want to make sure that costs, if you can't save money and keep it at the same level of cost or less, I don't think it's a good idea. I would say I would not approve it. And the other thing is you would have to guarantee and ensure that you understand supervision has to be at the same acceptable level that it would have to be at all times. So those are my 2 thoughts. So I want to be very clear, I'm prepared to approve Airbnbs under those 2 conditions. Supervision stays at a very high level, a very top priority, and you don't increase costs. If the board in any way feels there's other variables that should be thought about or talked about or wants to go any other direction, I would hate for you to be surprised if you find out the group is in an Airbnb and you feel like, we didn't even know this was happening. We didn't even know that. So I bring it before you at this point before it seems to take off, because there is some requests. And once it goes, it may happen quickly. I don't know. I don't know to what degree it'll become popular or not. But
Steve, any comments?
What about liability and, you know, damages to the property and insurance and those factors? You know, when you stay in a commercial hotel operation, you know, those are given. If you're staying in somebody's house that they rent out, you know, what kind of things are in place for that would cover us while we're staying there.
exactly. And I do think, and I do not know all the details, but I think some of the price sometimes has some insurance built into it for damages, but I don't know that to what degree it covers.
Usually an Airbnb holder has to have those, like a commercial policy. So like if the students went in and did create some damage of any sort, that policy should cover it, but
But
that's
I'm
not
not sure.
foolproof either, so.
But we deal with that again, even in a motel, we deal with,
Yeah.
if it's just vandalism and it's not that we get to just, we have to pay for that as well. So I don't know, again, if that's that much different. Students intentionally damage a site, even in a hotel, that cost is passed on to us. We've had to deal with that in the past. So I don't know how different that is than with an Airbnb or not.
Lucille, did you have any comments?
Sounds like a Airbnb is not as safe. Because it doesn't provide the continental breakfast as our kids.
It could be more expensive if it's possible. That's why I'd make it one of the factors. It can't be more expensive. We're not gonna just start passing on an additional cost when we can do things in a normal, cheaper way.
Mary?
Okay, few things. One of mine is risk. Have we checked with state risk management to see if what their opinion is, if there are risks that exist at an Airbnb that don't? So what's their recommendation, or do they have one? And then one thing that has happened when kids have stayed in homes, because this has been going on for a long time, 10 or more years, at least, maybe almost 20, is that if all students are being charged $30 to stay, then they all should have a bed, and not, some of them paying $30 and then, well, we threw 3 of them on the floor while we were there. So that would need to be spelled out somewhere as well, so that if coaches are booking those kinds of rooms, that they understand you can't just throw 3 of them on the floor, or 10 of them, or however many. Also, how many bathrooms are available? That's not a benefit when you've got a bunch of people, 4 to a room in a motel, and they're sharing a bathroom, as opposed to 8 kids sleeping in beds and they're sharing one bathroom. That can be a real problem, as well as no breakfast. However, the breakfast can be overcome if they're staying, say it's a state tournament or something, and they collectively, maybe $5 a piece pays for several meals for them because they cook the meals together. If you're cooking the meals, then sometimes you can do that for really cheap. But those would be my concerns, or what I would want to make sure that kids, whether they all deserve a bed if they're paying for it, and even if they're not paying it, they shouldn't go on a trip thinking they've got a bed and they don't. And then the whole bathroom thing, that's just not a benefit when you have to wait a really long time to get into a bathroom. But I will say my kids have been in past years, because I don't have any doing that anymore, but they stayed in lots and lots and lots of homes.
Yeah, it must have been going on a long time. I never did it as a
I
coach.
want to say,
so I didn't know.
let's see, 15 years ago probably, and it was always a good experience. I didn't have any complaints as a parent, because the kids all thought it was. Real concerns I did not have, but I think there can be some real concerns, and it needs to be monitored.
So Mary, was it an Airbnb? Because was
No,
it an
not
Airbnb, or
both.
was it like
Both.
my sister lives up here and has a home,
Both.
which is a little different? It was both.
Both. So years ago, we had a volleyball program that year after year after year stayed in homes.
But not an Airbnb, but a home.
Correct.
Okay.
But then when that option went away, then it was Airbnb. They were homes. One of them was, what's clear around the other side of the lake? What's of Utah Lake?
Saratoga's Eagle Mountain.
Yeah, over there. That one was definitely an Airbnb. There's some room for also some, I guess there is room for some concern. Okay, let's cook all our meals. This is what we're going to charge you. Where does all the food go after? Is there somebody who is like, oh, we get lots of food when this is finished? I mean,
Yeah.
there's some things that we need to be aware of, and then the supervision. When you have students, the other thing I would say is we have to be really careful not to ever, it's in our policy not to put students in with adults in any motel room. Those motel rooms are locked, and as far as I know, when we have, none of the supervisor or coaches have keys to anybody's room. But in an Airbnb, and that's one thing that I'm interested with risk management, is a concern that they're all in a home, nobody's behind locked doors. Is that a concern?
Yeah.
So maybe the best thing
I
to do
think
is
we
find out
definitely,
that
yeah,
information.
we'll definitely reach out to risk management. I think that's a
Okay.
great idea.
Okay. Nelson, did you have any comments? Okay. All right. So let's just, we'll need more information to come back. Okay.
Do you want to say that?
Oh, did you want to say something?
I'm just gonna mention, I did reach out to Risk, and right now they don't have a
position.
authoritative stance position on what has more risk than the other.
Yeah, and I felt like my kids had good experiences, you know, same as a motel room, but people can't be stupid. That's the bottom line. No matter where you're staying, people can't
So
be
it's
stupid.
really got to be comparable. The two, in cost wise, they literally have to be comparable or we just don't do it.
I really like the bed issue too, though, because if a parent is
agree.
paying
that
$30,
happened a lot.
you know, but what might happen here is this, that they may not be charging them $30. They might be saying, you know what, we're able to save money because we can pay for the Airbnb if everyone only brings $18. Now they can say $18 is better than 30, but some of you have to sleep on the floor. I don't know how I feel about
Yes.
that, but they can say it's cheaper.
Right. There was an incident the very first year the regular home wasn't available. Then there was an option to just rent from a woman who didn't have any kind of a setup to rent. She was a relative, and so I'm trying to remember this. So there was a question, can we do this? And lots of kids were going to end up on the floor, and that was a kibosh on that.
I'm
because
definitely
she
going to
didn't
use
have
that as a factor.
and
as
they were
well.
going to pay her, and it was a relative that was going to get money for, you know, renting her house. The number of bathrooms is an issue too. How many kids,
Sharing.
you know, if a coach chooses to do that, but then the kids are like, hey, we're just not happy about that. What do they do?
Well, I think
So that bedroom ratio, and we might want some guidelines or a policy or something that these kinds of things have to be in place if it's an Airbnb or a home.
But really, whether it's 30 or 18, everyone should have a bed if they're all paying the same amount. That's really what it should come down to.
Well, even if some kids are told, you know what, you only have to pay 10 because you're not getting a bed.
Yeah.
We're going to feed you. And they're like, dang, I really want to be the one of the ones that get a bed, but I don't get a choice.
So maybe we need a draft policy rather than of some sort. So, okay, the Olsons, come on up. Oh, Jen, you want to hide in the back till he's done?
Here's the guidance on standing, sitting.
Actually, why don't you bring
Doing
your chair up a
push-ups.
little
We
bit
don't have our-
closer?
We don't have our
Get
podium
comfortable.
here.
Oh, we don't have our podium here.
That'll work.
All right, how are you?
Bring down the podium. Sorry, Eva.
You're great. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, who would like to lead out?
Oh, I can.
Okay, so Mary's gonna lead out with some questions regarding your
Perfect.
survey. Or, I mean,
Okay,
your-
I had a little 12-minute walk around school today right before board meeting, so thank you for that. That was really fun to see what's going on during the flex period. So in the information that you provided for us, it says teacher clarity through questioning. I want to know how that looks, and before you answer that, is it the same in every classroom? Is it just verbal? Will the students actually know that was what was happening, or is there just lots of questioning, or is it written questioning? How? So.
Good question.
Doesn't
There's
look
lots
in
of
every
questions.
class.
I'm gonna give her a go.
Okay.
Then you clarify if I don't answer. Yes, one of the main goals is that students know exactly what's happening. We want them to be very conscious of questioning and asking what we're calling smart questions. Like, so we've started now. First step with that has been we got these, we call them question stems, but basically some prompts on how to start a question. And we went to the faculty and said, here's all these questions. Why don't you circle some that you'd like on a poster? And then we went to the students and kind of did the same thing. And the poster's actually being made right now by our graphic arts class that will just be displayed in every class. That will kind of be one of the foundations of this is like, these are question stems. This is what we're doing, introducing, and they should be done soon.
Give us an example of one. Do you have one on top of your head?
I sure do. I sure do.
See if we can even answer it.
Yeah. So, describe in your own words what blank means.
Okay.
That would be different than what does this mean? You just trying to make a little bit more thought to it, and that would be a level 1. We could get to level 3 that would require a little bit more and open-ended, but kind of the goal is to get, eventually we'll start to get data on yes or no questions versus open-end.
Can I jump in right there? Because you'll be surprised how many teachers will say, did everybody understand? We just introduced this. Who didn't understand, or how many that's a yes or no, and kids will sit back, and if everyone's raising their hand, they'll raise their hand, but you're not drilling in to really get responses that really inform you as to how deep did they learn and where do you need to go with next steps to fill those gaps.
Okay.
So yeah, like a level 3 question, I'm going to use blanks because I don't have a topic in my mind, but what would happen to blank if blank were changed and why? So that's something that's way more than yes or no. And the goal behind the poster too with the question stems is it's going to be visible, and teachers will be pulling from the question stems, and students will be pulling from the question stems.
Will they hear the question and read it at the same time, or no?
Not necessarily. We use Canvas a lot, so it could definitely be in there. But at this point, it's more just for those quick questions. Like Superintendent just gave an example of, do you understand this? Can we go a little bit further and give it more thought? And yeah.
So is it going to be so clear that if parents are aware of this questioning, they can say, what were the questions in language arts today? What were the questions in math today? Would it be that clear? And the student would be like, oh yeah, I remember. Is it that?
I hope so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
don't know
hope.
if you'll see that happening
But
much.
I've been kind of to start introducing the question stems because the kids don't know yet. But I've been going around and been listening to questions and just like a few minute observations, and a kid will ask a question that I would consider I'm calling a smart question, but something more than like a yes or no that is like thought provoking, like really getting an explanation on like seeking an explanation on really trying to get a deeper understanding of the topic is what I'm talking about. And I'm like, hey, allowed to, what size of shirt you wear? And I've got a few shirts and I'm digging and I come back into class. That was a great question. So the kids are starting to, we haven't really launched it yet school wide, but they're starting to get their interest peaked on questioning and rewards.
So Jay, you said the teacher asked it, of course, but then you're saying, did I hear the student ask those also?
Yes.
Based on the prompts that are being made.
Yeah, and right now the prompts aren't being made. So like the T-shirts was just going from just a random observation, great question. Let's give you a reward, get some buzz going on in the class, like, hey, so and so asked a good question and got a question, and then later on, hopefully that the buzz will lead to, hey, now here's a poster that will help you answer better questions or more thought-provoking questions.
And I think it's really a good spot to tie it back to my opening today in board meeting, because our DLT took a lot of time in multiple principals meetings, if I'm remembering right, tell me, to introduce this concept of teacher clarity and the research behind it and why it's so important and the steps. So they really provided for our admin team the support they needed to then go out and work with teachers and staff. So just want to throw that in there because that's a great example of where that DLT has provided support and help.
Yeah, and we're doing assessment to achievement through the state too, and teacher clarity. And this year it's focusing on teacher clarity through questioning. Cool. So we're going to get a lot of support and accomplish this goals throughout the year as well.
Great. Thanks.
So under challenges, it says attendance is lower this year when compared to our past non-COVID years. Last year we were at 87.26%. This year we are at 89.42%. So MHS would like to be above 93% by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So how do you plan to?
So a lot of that I think has happened from kind of what's been nicknamed the COVID slide, but creating bad habits. School's been looked at last year. We started with option 1, 2, and 3, and attendance was a very fluid thing, especially if you're option 2. So I think first step is, and we've already started doing this, is conferences with students, making sure that they know the value of attendance, tying in parents with this too on like, hey, we really need your child here, and kind of we've had for years, I think our average is, I said 93 because I think it's a lofty goal, but I think we've really been above 94% attendance every year I can remember. So it's not that we're not capable of it. We just need to reinforce some habits and change some habits and emphasize that attendance is important, I think, and fall into place.
I have a follow-up on that. Do you think it has anything to do with if your child is home, keep them home? Because, I mean, if your child is sick, keep your child home, because it used to be, you just force your kids to, every time they say, I don't feel good, you're like, you're fine, go to school anyway. But now it's like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm supposed to keep you home.
And thank you for the clarity too. We're going to be targeting unexcused absences first, and then and the medical. We're not even going to, if you've gone to a doctor and something like, not even doing, if we've tracked, a certain kid is here in school and they're still missing 35-40% of the time, which we have students, even if they're parent excused, I think we need to sit down with that parent and really discuss, this is you're if you miss that much, you're not going to be successful, and kind of illustrate that, or it's going to be challenging to be successful. If we get bodies here in school, we'll get them to pass and graduate. If we don't, then we've got another challenge, which is getting the bodies here in school. So
Is that why the graduation rate is lower?
our graduation rate, every kid that I'm going to say fell through the crack was option 3. So yes,
Okay.
their bodies were not in the school.
And same with
Every
the
single
failing
one.
grades?
Failing grades is something that I think, and I put that on there too. All of my challenges I could rewrite as goals, and I did that on purpose because it's something I'm personally tracking. I think the failing grades was 2-part: attendance, definitely, and the other one is we didn't really have built-in intervention. So I'm hoping that our current flex time is going to be the answer, and we're going to see a huge decrease in that. Is my goal, and I really think it's going to happen.
Okay.
You mentioned it was good to have the option 3 students back, and you're trying to get them caught up. You kind of touched on a few things that you're doing. I was just going to have you elaborate more on what are you seeing as far as, how far are they behind? What are you doing to get them caught up and such?
That's various places depending on different students as far as how far they're behind. We've had kids, I don't want to say that every kid that was option 3 came back then was years behind, but we have definitely had kids that haven't had any education in about 18 months. From March till they're back now, and it shows, because it's not only that they stayed stagnant, but they've decreased a little bit. Our intervention classes, we have more kids in our reading intervention class right now than we ever have. Our flex time, we're got kids assigned and we're pulling them. After school homework, we're trying to think creative ways to get them caught up. I think that the flex time that we now have is going to be huge in helping give those kids the intervention and the extra support they need. We've got a couple of positions, which is a challenge, that are open, and they've been open for months, that I'm hoping to fill, because I think they're going to have a giant piece in this puzzle too, of tracking at-risk kids, mentoring them, and helping them get caught up. But so far, we're having a hard time filling them.
Okay, so you're the first school we've been to for months, and you're on the A-Day, B-Day. Speak to that. How's it work? Did kids like it?
I think it's
we want
good.
Some feedback on
Yeah,
this.
I think the A-Day, B-Day, so far, I think it's been positive. I'm not going to sit here and say we're experts at it yet. Like, we've got some room for growth. And that's the same with the flex time, too. I think that's going to be the answer to a lot of problems. But it's going to get a lot of tweaking from now till the end of the year until we fine-tune it. And hopefully it's a beautiful working machine by the end. But it allows a lot more opportunities. Going back to Steve's question, so that reminds me, with the A-Day, B-Day, with the 80-minute, we now have time in class that there's interventions happening in class prior to, rather than the 45 minutes teach, go do your homework. Walking around, there's teach, okay, let's do some homework, small groups. So there's some interventions happening now in class with the blocks that didn't. I think all in all, walking around talking to teachers and stuff, I think it's been very positive.
But obviously you love the flex time.
Yeah, I think the flex time it's been a challenge. Like just getting it to move, getting it to go. There's been a lot of time invested in it to this point. There's gonna be a lot more time invested in it, tweaking it, but it's an answer to a problem. So I have to like the flex time because yeah, I think right now in this point, catching up some of these kids that we haven't seen and dealing with some of our low kids and graduation and stuff without flex time, I don't know what we'd be doing. I think it's really a fantastic time to switch schedules and include a flex time in there.
Great. Nelson, do you have any questions?
I do have one question.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Olson.
Good afternoon.
Under the celebrations number 2, your true feelings this year for Monticello High School is that school culture will positively benefit from their work. Could you explain that a little bit more and give us an example?
Yeah, it's kind of more of a gut feeling right now, but I am so confident my gut feeling is going to come true that I've put it in writing. But this last year, we had some great teachers that we lost. We lost over 100 years of experience, and they were fantastic. But we got some new teachers in the school, and it's kind of given us the opportunity to grow together. And just from the PLC meetings we've had so far, faculty meetings, it is, I think, we're only in September, and the school seems like we're already working super, super well together. The flex time, the AB, we're having some really good conversations, and it just seems like a level of collaboration that we haven't been able to achieve in the past. And I think a lot of it is just the, 5 new teachers is a lot. That's a good percentage of our school, and I think it's presented an opportunity that we can really grow together. And I really honestly think what my statement should have been, because I really feel, is that I think Monticello High is going to really reach some new heights that we haven't experienced before. I'm confident we're going to, reap the benefits of it.
Well, that's great. That's exciting. Sounds great that you have some new staff on board, and I wish you well, that you grow well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank you, Casey.
Okay, Jenna, the hot seat.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right. Who wants to start? Steve, do you have any questions for Jenna?
Yeah, you mentioned you were trying to connect with the families.
Yes.
And I was curious about what you're doing, how you're going about connecting with the families.
So the first major thing that we did was we held back to school night, which was the first back to school night we've seen in 2 years. And at first I was really scared because we start in the gym and we probably only had 20 or 25 families sitting in there, and I got very nervous that we weren't going to have much of a turnout. But over the course of the next 15-20 minutes, we were seeing 10 or 11 families a class, so more than 50% of the people showed up. But we took the time to I took the time to express to families that we're happy to be back together and we're happy to be working together and that we're doing things as a team. I took the time to explain what our goals were for school and how we're working on those as a team and that they're part of that team. And then they went back to the classrooms and they spoke to their teachers. They got to listen to the teachers of each of the kids. And then all the people who didn't come that night were reached out to by each of the teachers, sent an email, we missed you. You're an important part of the team here at Monticello Elementary School and we need you to be here for that. And so I think it's just important that they know that last year we were spending so much time saying we've got to keep it safe and we're not going to allow people to come in, visitors or volunteers. And now people are a little leery about maybe stepping back in to the space. And so we just want to make sure that people feel we're back. We need you. You're an important part of this piece. So that was the first step. And then just that we're checking in. We have CCR Day coming up soon. And we've got a pretty lofty goal of seeing every single person in that building. And we're hoping to be able to get to see every family on CCR Day and just letting people know that they are an important part of what we're doing here. It's not just teachers and students, it's families that make growth. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Monticello Elementary School will decrease the number of office referrals by students who were seen in the office multiple times this year previous.
Our third goal, so we thought it was, when we set the third goal, we wanted to look at working on the social and emotional health of students at Monticello Elementary School. It's a big push from the state. It's a big push around, and we know it's something that's really important to make Monticello better. And so we didn't want to make we wanted to make sure we didn't set a goal that was we'll have less office referrals, because that just elicits people not to turn in their office referrals. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at students who had been coming multiple times to the office, who had been coming back multiple times. And so we'd rather help the students be reflective and restorative of how they are working at school and make sure that they, try not to come back and get in trouble. Help them find the skills that they need to be more effective at school. So that's why we chose that goal. Was that your question? I probably answered before you got the chance to finish your question.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, that was one of my as well, so
Yeah.
you've already answered that one. So the one, describe individual DORF pathway goal for a student. It's like, okay, tell us.
Well, now I'm feeling a little.
Describe that.
There's Christy and Julie looking at me behind. Well, so
They're going like this.
no, it's perfect. So each student in the past, we've sat down and not K, but in the early literacy, we've sat down and we set goals for each of our students in just reading. And this year, a couple of things have changed. We are now doing an Acadience math assessment, and so you notice probably that there's a math goal and there's a reading goal. We decided at our school to make sure that we were all kind of on the same page. We didn't want it to be lower grades and upper grades, that everybody would be tracking their fluency, except for, even kindergarten in their own regards. So, and fluency is, DORF is Dibble's oral reading fluency. So being able to read aloud fluently. And so there are a couple components that go into that, but we wanted each student in each grade level, there's a benchmark that students reach for to be proficient, but their pathway goal is not necessarily what the benchmark is for that grade. It is a goal that's set by the teacher that would say that they would be reaching towards being on benchmark by the end of the year. So each student's goal would be just for them, rather than saying, all right, if you're in second grade, you should reach here. No, you're going to do a little bit better. It's setting a goal individually for each student to read fluently.
So I guess there's some that maybe not reach. I mean, is there anybody that they're saying now, benchmark's really not the goal, it might be a little lower?
Yeah,
but
it's more about setting an individual goal for each student.
There's students who are at benchmark, but there's still goals for them to move forward, and those will be tracked. Those are tracked.
Yep.
So we're saying with their Acadience,
Acadience, yes.
Acadience, and that that test isn't given to kindergartners. Is that
It
correct?
is given
Oh,
to
it is.
kindergartners.
Okay.
It just looks a little different for
Okay.
They're testing different skills in kindergarten than they are in,
Okay.
and I
Then
guess
the
in
reading
every other
fluency
grades.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does it cross from grade to grade if a child is, say, in kindergarten but they're an excellent reader? Are they being tested in do they know if they're proficient benchmark first or second grade? Does it work that way?
So there's different skills that they test in different grades, and so especially like in kindergarten, we've strived to, instead of just saying these are the skills that we'll look at the beginning of year in kindergarten, we'll have students that come into kindergarten who can pass those skills off right quick. But we wouldn't benchmark them at those. We would progress monitor them, so we can give them the assessment but not necessarily put it onto their record, so we can track those skills from different grade levels but not necessarily record it with the state. Does that make sense? So like first grade reading, that's okay. Like, and
I'm
maybe
just
I export it.
wondering, I guess I'm wondering if they can just progress up through the grades.
Yeah.
In their particular grade, they keep.
So just to explain pathways, it's research based. It's saying a student comes in at this certain level, they're taking all students that have ever used this program and determining that this would be an average amount of growth, this would be, above average, below average. So it's taking all the research behind it to say if the student comes in at this level, even if they're a really high student, you can set goals based upon how much growth. So it will rank them to say they've made more growth than most students who started at the same place. So that's the pathways goal. But as far as DIPLs overall, it's used as an indicator. So if we have a student who's reading beyond their grade level, we wouldn't necessarily set a goal based upon DIPLs because it's just an indicator for reading. It's not saying, so if a student who's reading more proficiently, we would want to encourage them to read at whatever they're at, because all of this is a goal for reading, right? It's all to get them reading by grade level by third grade. That's what the research is based upon. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that you take a kindergartner and give them continue to give them DIPLs based upon a second grade level. That's not the intention of it. But a teacher should still be, if a kindergartner is reading, they still would be using reading and seeing how they're progressing on reading. But the subtest, like the whole words read, that could still be given to an advanced kindergartner because obviously all the whole words read that you read would be a much higher number than a student who's just barely learned letter names and sounds. So the subtests are still available. Does that make sense?
I'll just add to that when they get to first grade is the first time they actually test mid-year at oral reading fluency. So that's connected text when they're actually reading connected text. That's the first time they're tested on that as a benchmark. They can be progress monitored off grade level from first grade through sixth grade if you have a child that needs to go up or down. So teachers can still track that and provide that information through oral reading fluency assessment, but it is not recorded on the benchmarks 3 times a year. Their score is, which will show that they're way above or they're below or they're right at, but not necessarily using the materials to test them off grade level on the benchmark assessment. Is that good?
Yeah.
And then we do
Thank
have
you.
other assessments that we can use
Oh, yeah.
for oral reading fluency, for students in kindergarten who are reading really high, that we can do quick reading assessments that are fast, they're just not indicators.
Okay, I need to come in and see Acadians.
Yeah.
So it means more.
So
It's
like,
easier to
that's
see.
your goal,
Yeah.
but is that the goal for every elementary in the district, or is it just for MES? I mean, not the goal, but to do that tracking and the whole thing. Is that a goal for every?
K3,
All through
Okay.
K3, Monticello, we just
Okay, you're
decided to
doing
be
it.
able to do.
6, we've left up to the individual
Yes.
schools. How
Oh,
they-
okay.
The state has provided us licenses this year, first time that they provided us through 4 through 6 for anyone who needs it. And so it used to be just students who were
Right.
below, but anyway, we have access K through 6 now, and we have our K3 goal that everyone district-wide is doing.
Awesome. Okay.
And it really is just it identifies our at-risk students.
Nice.
So
Nelson, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Not to be personal, but another Olson.
there is another Olson.
I'm assuming you are the significance of the other Olson.
Can you tell by my voice? How did you tell? Yes, I am. Yes.
Wait till she bosses him
I'm so
around.
far away, but I'm trying to
Just
put
like the record to say
put
she
things
claimed
together here. Goal
Write that
number
down
2.
somewhere.
Maybe maybe Julie was explaining this. She was kind of hard to hear in the background. 80% of the students is the same percentage as the number one as well.
Yes.
So what compiles the computation growth?
So what goes into the growth goal? Well, yes, Christy hit it a little, right? And so it is a lot of, I want to say the whole, right? The whole nation. We've compiled all these people who they do a baseline year, and then they track students who perform similar to other students, and then they track and they say, so if there was a fifth grade student who was with a first grade student who was with another group of first grade students who scored similar to them, the next year they would say this would be approximately the growth that we would see compared to their peers. And so it's some big, huge algorithm that I am not smart enough, a computer does, and people who have huge advanced degrees, but they tell us what an adequate goal would be. And they actually tell us, oh, this would be an okay goal. This would be an above average goal. This would be an average goal to set with them. And so we can kind of take our expertise of the students and then set a goal that we think would be sufficient for them. Did that answer your question, Nelson?
Yes and no, because I'm looking at the 80% on both.
Oh, okay.
Is there a close relationship with the Dorf pathways and the computation goals?
Oh yeah, the computation. So the reason we said, so last year we were in the 70s. I want to say 74, 76% of our students reached their pathway goal. So we wanted to set something that was maybe a little bit higher for that. We've never seen the computation. This is the first year that we have done the math acadients. And so we just set it the same. And we may come to find out that that is something that was not reachable or reasonable, but we have not seen the test. We don't know what the results of the students are quite yet. We're almost finishing up with that over at the school. And so we just set that to be very similar because we didn't, I guess it was just a reasonable guess, right? We were making an estimate about what it might be like.
Okay. All right, that explains it. So you just basically just pick the percentage out of the air and hopefully they meet it or get close.
We're baseline data for the, yes, absolutely. We just said it the same as our language arts. Yep. We're hoping that it's going to turn out to be similar to our language arts goal.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Jenna.
We threw a lot of questions at you guys. That was fun. We learned a lot, so
Yes,
we
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Shakespeare Experience Spanish. That's you again.
So this
Are
is
we on month 3? I
This
hope.
is our
Yes.
third visit of this, so unless there's any, unless you have any questions, concerns, or anything, this would be the time that we will approve this for Monticello High School. So this is the overnight stay in October. It would be voluntary for students who want to participate through the humanitarian department here at the school. They'll go over and watch 2 Shakespearean plays. They'll get a back stage tour, and I think we added in 2 meals-ish. Yeah. So.
Something that's exciting this year too is one of the lead roles is a Monticello High School graduate.
Oh, really? Who was that?
Anna
Ellie
Frederick's
Thanks.
daughter.
Really? That's cool.
Kind of
That's
fun.
fun.
That's really cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
questions, board? All right.
So we're, yeah.
It is
so I
on
guess
as an
that'll be
action
item.
Okay, thank
Awesome.
you. Mr. Tyrell, our joint use agreement with City of Blanding.
Yeah, so we have the joint use of property agreement from Blanding City. This is really similar to the same agreements that we've entered into in the past with Blanding City. Just a couple of things that I wanted to just point out on this agreement. The City Wellness Center is a fee-supported facility by the community, so it is not included in the same type of agreement as all the other facilities are. The other thing that is different from past agreements is just the meeting requirements. the city wanted to have kind of more of a formal scheduling meetings to meet with the high school and middle school personnel. And I talked with both principals and the athletic director at San Juan High School in order to meet with them and schedule out different activities that might be going on so that there's not a conflict anywhere. And that there's just a little bit of different wording in this agreement from past just in order to meet that requirement. Other than that, it's what we've done in the past. We just had to have it as part of a board meeting so that we can approve it if that's what you decide to do, and then we can sign it and get into that same agreement. And the term does go to, it is 4-year term, so this would come back up in 2025 if we agree to this use of property agreement. And then just the last thing is, superintendent and I have met, and we'd like to look at getting a formal agreement in place with like Monticello City as well. And so we look to set up those meetings in the coming weeks and as well as different chapters, like the Anna chapter, is it the Anna chapter that we meet with in Monument Valley for Montezuma Creek and Monument Valley communities.
With the addition of our new gyms across the district, I think there's probably a good need to have a similar agreement, and probably the local government in the Montezuma Creek area and in the Monument Valley area is the chapter house. So I think that's where we would probably want to establish this similar type of an agreement.
Are there facilities in both of those or either one of those communities that the school district wants to use?
No, not necessarily, but these type of theater programs and accelerated programs of the youth programs, they do want to use our facilities. So I think we need at least some kind of an agreement of how that'll play out.
All right, you can just continue on. Fraud risk.
All right. So this is just, I think it was new last year. You guys probably saw this last year, just this fraud risk assessment. That is a requirement from the state auditor's office that we complete annually. And so this will be an agenda item every year. It's really just to kind of measure where we're at as a district as far as our fraud risk is concerned. I've gone through this and with superintendent, we've completed the assessment. And after speaking with the auditors, we had our auditors here a couple of weeks ago. Really what the goal of this risk assessment is just to see where we're at as a district and then continue to make improvements so that we can always get better. And so a couple of things just to note on here to look at, we've marked no on some of these items. We'll look at creating a policy that's reporting fraud and abuse that doesn't exist currently. And then you guys all did the open public meeting training that took a few minutes. That's a requirement, it's an annual requirement, but it's not a part of this. You'll notice number 5 on the fraud risk assessment does have all governing bodies completing a separate training. That training, I do have a link on the agenda item that you can go directly to the training. It does estimate that it's an hour and a half and all board members would be, in order for us to mark yes on that number 5, you would all have to complete that training within 4 years of your election day. So we just have to have you complete that in order for us to mark yes and receive the 20 points there. And then the other ones, that 8 and 9, do we have a formal internal audit function and a formal audit committee? Those are things that I think we can work towards. Currently, we don't have anything in place that meets the requirement from the state auditor's office. And so we'd like to look towards implementing some of that. That's not an overnight process, but we'd like to, continue to improve. And ultimately, we want to stay in that low to very low range on this fraud risk assessment. So this is just, again, one of those items that's going to come up annually. We are required to present it to the board so you know where we're kind of at. And if you have any questions, we can try to answer those.
Go ahead.
So the training that you were mentioning, that's a one-time, that's a once every 4-year training that's longer than the one that we've always taken annually?
Yeah, so the annual one that you just did, and I'm glad you bring this up too, because moving forward, after speaking with the auditors, what we'd like to do is just at a board meeting when we do this, we'd like to do that training where you're not doing it on your own time, that we just schedule it and we do it all as part of a board meeting. It takes 10 minutes out of our board meeting. And it is separate from this other training. So that one is an annual, it's required, we have to do it every year. This other one, it does take longer, they estimate an hour and a half, and it's once every 4 years essentially.
So on that audit committee, so we have not had one in place and should have, or we need to have one, or what's? I'm just digging a little deeper into that. And who does that consist of, or what does it consist of?
So the recommendation is that you have a financial expert. Yeah. That's usually generally either a member of the board or someone in the community that's on that audit committee, and then you have someone from your administration that's on it. You also look at just having a variety of people, whether it's from the school level on the audit committee, individuals in the community that we feel would be good to have on that. It's really, there's not like a specific, you have to have this person. They just have recommendations of who they would like to have on there.
Because a couple of years ago at that leadership training that some of us are going to be going to, that question was asked, and we brought it back to the board, and we knew that Steve was part of that, but did you ever meet on an audit committee?
To my knowledge, we never formalized an audit committee in the district.
See, and that's how we thought we had taken care of that, because they specifically asked us at USBA at that leadership whether we had that under wraps. Well, I was at that meeting, and they asked me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I remember.
And they were kind of like, you gotta
we
be
had
kidding
that
me.
discussion.
I remember the discussion.
Yes.
I don't remember any steps
So-
being taken to actually formalize.
So you'll obviously see that through and make sure that's done. And then, do we have to take a quiz at the end of the fraud training? I mean, like, guess what I'm saying is,
Yes, we have to pay attention.
can I let it
Might be
run?
hard for me, but
I just wonder if I
So
can
you're
let
talking
it
about
run.
like the in board meeting, or you're talking about the hour-long one?
An hour-long one. I'm just hoping I can let it run and take the quiz. If there was not a quiz,
Whoever takes it
we've gotta
first,
pay
will y'all
attention
let
the
us
whole
know?
hour.
Yeah.
so
I don't know.
I'll pay attention.
For when we do the in board meeting training for the one that you just recently completed, there wouldn't be a quiz because we would just show the YouTube video and we would just mark it in the minutes of who was in attendance. So you can avoid that stress, Lori, about having to take a quiz in front of everyone.
I know you hate
So we
to
can
fail.
get out it's an hour long, we
So-
can get out our popcorn and
Okay.
have the popcorn and drinks.
Anything else?
Oh, that's it.
Nice work, and you survived the audit.
We did.
There was a lot of them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Okay.
We'll get a report from them in November or December.
Yes, we will. Okay. Matt.
Okay, it's that time of year again. We have a list that we brought for requesting your approval. It's a list of, I think there's 24 LEA specific or licenses or endorsements that we're requesting the board approve as we try and continue to hit the licensing target that for whatever reason continues to move on us a little bit. But we're making improvements each year. You approved something similar to this last year. I would imagine that there'll be something similar next year. Questions about any of those?
Just remind me, the process on this. Why is it necessary for the board to approve while they're working on these? Because they're supposed to have them technically?
So
Is
it used to be, in order for them to be considered on an LEA specific license, the board president would just sign off on the application. So we would put together an application and say, this is why the board president would sign it, and it would go. As part of the new licensing, these licenses get individually approved by the state school board. So once you approve it, it goes to them and the state school board approves it as a group. It's just a new it's just a new process with the licensing changes. And what that does is it, for purposes of Cactus, which is the system that tracks Utah educator credentials, it considers them qualified for our professional staff cost reimbursement. It doesn't consider them highly qualified for, if No Child Left Behind was still in play, for something like that. But for the professional staff cost, it does allow us to receive that.
Even though they're still working on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes, Nelson does. Sorry. Go ahead.
At Monument Valley for the net language and culture, Victoria Yazzie, to the right on the column says submitting OOS application. What is that?
That is she's submitting an out-of-state application with her Arizona license to hopefully get reciprocity in the state of Utah. Also, with the Dene language and the Navajo instruction classes, the state is kind of adjusting how those are earned and how the agreement works, the memorandum of understanding with the Navajo Nation. So we're starting with the out-of-state, and hopefully that will get approved here shortly. If not, we want the LEA specific just in case, just so that we can count her in our numbers should that system break down and it not get approved prior to October 15th.
Does this also require an endorsement as well?
It does. You start with a license and then attach endorsements. And so the endorsement historically has been to pass the Navajo language fluency test and get that recommendation. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Well, I understand she has been teaching the Navajo language and culture before, so I'm assuming she's endorsed already. But from a different state again, will that suffice? Even though it's from a different state, or does she have to go through the state of Utah to?
I anticipate that it will transfer over to a Utah license. That being said, I've been wrong in the past. That's why we're requesting an LEA specific on her. But if the system works properly, and hopefully it will, she won't have any difficulties getting a license with out-of-state license reciprocity.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, our River Region secondary activities applications.
Yeah, this is a standard process, but it's probably a little different this year due to the COVID situation. We are seeing some changing in schedules. We've seen some cancellation, and we've seen some quickly looking at options to fill games to try to keep our students still participating. And so that's what's reflected here in these schedules. You're seeing some changes in yellow. And of course, anything that goes over 150 miles needs to come back to the board. So you do have some of those. You see where there's Monument Valley, I believe, that wants to go to Richfield, and then I believe also to Orderville, volleyball. But
So I have a question about
Yes.
it's over 150 miles, correct?
mm-hmm.
So the football to the city, that is not a region game. And that's 153 miles. Do
You may have already approved some of these.
Oh, okay.
Because we already
Okay.
approved all
That
of our
makes sense.
schedules. These are new additions to the schedules and changes, and they need to
Okay.
bring those back before the board. I don't see any problem with these new changes and additions. I think they're reasonable. So I would recommend the board approve them, but it is formal process for the board to approve those.
Any questions? All right, well, we are dismissed until public comment at 6. Push the pause.
Yeah, I'll push the pause, but you help me remember to push the record.
You know, the thing is, it's like a record.
Yeah.
Now you just don't know what to do about yourselves because you all have too much time.
Good work, and see,
Go
I
take
have
a
to
tour of
compliment the
school.
board on your questions. You guys, that was
Good
awesome.
job, guys.
That was very. If the board ever wanted to learn more about Acadians, or do they call it?
I do.
Bibbles? If they wanna just request that, we could certainly bring a training on that. There's
Or I'll
experts
just-
right back there.
Actually,
just
this
go
is
into
what
the
I
school.
would
I
really
can-
like, and I know
can
this
do that
is,
in the school.
if there's someone
Planning elementary.
Yes, but if the board wants something, I mean, we could bridge the gap. We see all these